Imagine reaching the pinnacle of your ambition only to realize the path you walked was paved by someone else. You stand in the silence of your own achievement, feeling a cold dread because victory belongs to a system you never truly understood. You were an instrument rather than the architect. Why did you allow yourself to be played so easily? The answer lies not in your failures, but in your transparency. The end came long before you even began. Throughout history, human behavior has followed patterns so consistently that they appear almost timeless. Empires rise and fall, leaders gain influence and lose it, and societies repeatedly find themselves shaped by the same invisible forces. While most people focus on events, those who understand power focus on the underlying patterns that create those events. Beneath politics, business, relationships, and culture lies a hidden architecture of influence that quietly shapes decisions, perceptions, and outcomes. The names change and the centuries pass, but the mechanisms remain remarkably similar. I am James, and this is Shadow Philosophy. Here, we examine the darker dimensions of human nature, not to celebrate manipulation, but to understand it. From Niccolo Machiavelli's writings to the psychological strategies used in the modern world, influence has always been most effective when it remains unseen. Today we will explore the 8 traits of dark intelligence, the qualities that allow certain individuals to read people, shape outcomes, and accumulate power from the shadows. By exposing these hidden structures, we gain the awareness needed to recognize manipulation before it controls us. Let us begin our descent into the architecture of power. Calculated opacity and adaptive persona. Machiavelli famously observed that a prince must appear virtuous, while remaining ready to act differently when necessity demands. In our digital age, this has evolved into the adaptive persona. We curate our online presence with obsessive detail, creating a digital facade that masks our true intentions. This is not merely about deception, but about calculated opacity. You show exactly enough of yourself to keep people intrigued while hiding the fundamental truth. Most people are terrified of being misunderstood, so they expose their entire lives in the desperate hope of validation. And history noticed the folly in this. When you are fully transparent, you are fully predictable. When you are predictable, you are easily managed. The modern common enemy here is the culture of forced vulnerability that demands we share our deepest insecurities with strangers who have no interest in our well-being. You believe you are building a connection, but you are giving others the leverage to define you. The paradox is that the more you reveal, the less power you possess. When you maintain a carefully constructed mystery, you force others to work harder to understand you. They project their own desires onto your silence. They trust the version of you that they have created in their minds. But the pattern returned in every era. Leaders who mastered this art did not seek to be loved or even understood. They sought to be necessary. They wore the mask that the situation required and removed it only when the objective was secured. This is not about becoming a liar. It is about recognizing that your identity is a tactical resource that should not be squandered on those who seek only to consume it. Most people never saw it coming. They believed their authenticity was a currency, but it was only bait. Detachment and silent leverage. In the corporate theatre and the complex dance of modern dating, there exists a profound fear of being forgotten. We attach ourselves to outcomes for people and to status with an intensity that borders on desperation. Yet the masters of influence understand the principle of detachment. To control a situation, you must be willing to walk away from it at any moment. This is the ultimate form of silent leverage. When you are not afraid to lose, you possess terrifying freedom. Think of the colleagues who seem entirely unbothered by the chaos of office politics. They remain calm, while others are frantic. They hold their position, while others scramble for validation. They understand that their value is not tied to the system's approval. This detachment is often mistaken for arrogance, but it is a form of deep psychological clarity. Many philosophers observed that we suffer more in imagination than we do because we cling to things beyond our control. The common enemy is the toxic belief that our worth is defined by our ability to keep up with the demands of an irrational environment. When you demonstrate that you are not desperate for the goal, you become the one who controls the movement. You do not need to raise your voice to dictate the outcome. Your presence alone becomes the center of gravity. This requires enormous discipline because the human mind is wired to seek belonging. We fear the silence of the outsider, but it is in that silence that leverage is born. You wait for the moment when others are drowning in their own attachments, and in that vulnerability, your steady, detached influence becomes the only reliable point of reference. It is a slow and deliberate process. You do not force your way to the top. You allow the system to reveal its own fragility, and then you step into the vacuum. Most people will view this as a form of cruelty, but it is merely the recognition that the world does not owe you a place. You must secure it yourself through the cold application of strategic indifference. And history noticed this too. The quietest individuals are often the ones who hold the most absolute authority. Psychological echo and ambiguous morality. There is a sophisticated form of manipulation that operates entirely through the illusion of empathy. This is the psychological echo. You mirror another person's fears, needs, and desires until they believe you are the only one who truly understands them. It is an intoxicating experience for the target. They feel heard and seen in a world that is fundamentally indifferent to their existence. But this is not empathy, it is data collection. You are identifying the cracks in their armor so that you can navigate through them. This trait is often paired with ambiguous morality. We are taught that the world is divided into good and evil, but the results lie in the grey areas. Machiavelli understood that the rigid adherence to moral dogma is a luxury that few can afford when the objective is survival or dominance. The modern problem is that we are trapped in binary thinking by the algorithms that feed our prejudices. We want to be on the right side of history so badly that we become blind to the mechanics of how we are being used. You may find yourself manipulated by someone who uses the language of justice to advance their own interests. They echo your values because they know that is the fastest way to gain your trust. The paradox is that the more certain you are of your own righteousness, the easier you are to steer. The common enemy is the shallowness of modern social conditioning that rewards performative morality over actual competence. When you understand that morality is a subjective framework, you gain the freedom to operate with real intent. This does not mean you abandon your principles, it means you understand how those principles are used against you. You become the one who sets the terms of the conversation. You no longer react to the moral outrage of the crowd. You observe it as a diagnostic tool. You see where the pain is, and you understand how to address it. Most people never saw it coming. They believed they were fighting for something larger than themselves, while they were merely being fed a narrative that kept them docile. But the pattern returned. Every great movement has been defined by those who understood how to speak the language of the people, while they pursued their own agenda in the dark. Controlled exposure and outcome. Obsession. Why is our generation so obsessed with external metrics of success? We measure our happiness by the number of people who acknowledge our presence. We fear irrelevance above all else. This is the trap that controlled exposure is meant to solve. By strategically withholding your narrative, you force others to fill in the blanks with their own curiosity. You do not need to announce every achievement. You do not need to share every struggle. You allow people to wonder. This brings us to the most dangerous trait of all, outcome obsession. Most people play games they cannot win because they are focused on the game's ego rather than the result. They want to be seen as the winner. They want applause. They are distracted by the noise. The person who practices outcome obsession does not care about the drama of the process. They care about the result. They are willing to endure boredom, frustration, and setbacks if it serves the ultimate aim. The common enemy here is the destruction of our attention span by the digital systems that demand constant engagement. We are trained to seek immediate rewards, but the masters of dark intelligence play a long game. They understand that patience is the ultimate form of power. The paradox is that by giving up the need for immediate recognition, you gain the ability to achieve what is impossible for those obsessed with the spotlight. You are the architect of your own outcome. You do not look for permission. You look for the mechanism of the world, and you adjust your approach to exploit it. This is why you feel unease when you look at your own life. You realize you have been playing by the rules of a game that was designed to keep you limited. You were focused on the short term, while others were building the infrastructure of their own dominance. But you can change the pattern. You must cultivate the ability to be invisible until the moment you choose to reveal your hand. Most people never saw it coming, and they never will, and history noted the difference between the noisemakers and the architects. Transparency is a luxury that the powerful rarely afford. Throughout this journey, we have explored the hidden architecture that shapes human interaction and examined the 8 traits of dark intelligence that operate beneath the surface of everyday life. These patterns are not confined to history books, political institutions, or corporate boardrooms. They exist wherever human beings compete for influence, status, resources, and control. Most people move through life unaware of these forces, reacting to outcomes without understanding the mechanisms that produce them. Yet those who learn to recognize the patterns begin to see the world differently. The shadows become less mysterious, and the motives behind human behavior become easier to understand. Dark intelligence itself is neither good nor evil. It is a tool indifferent to the hands that wield it and the intentions that guide it. Some use this knowledge to manipulate, deceive, and dominate. Others use it to protect themselves, navigate complex social environments, and better understand the forces shaping their lives. The architecture of the mind remains unchanged regardless of who studies it. What changes is the wisdom, discipline, and character of the observer. You now hold a map that many will never discover. What you do with that knowledge is a decision only you can make. I am James, and this is Shadow Philosophy. Watch the patterns, question appearances, and never forget that the greatest forms of power are often unseen.